Antimicrobials are molecules that can inhibit or kill microorganisms such as bacteria, parasites, and fungi. And based on the target organisms, the name may change to specify the target activity. For example, for bacteria, we can call them antibiotics. For fungi, antifungals. And for parasites, antiparasitics. Importantly, none of these are actually effective to kill viruses.
Knowing that antibiotics only treat bacterial infections is a simple idea, but many of us do not recognize when we have a bacterial versus a viral or parasitic infection. And we rely on physicians to make that diagnosis for us.
Antimicrobial resistance is a global issue that threatens public health everywhere. And I think that nowhere else is most unappreciated than when we talk about pathogenic fungi. Fungi are the closest to us in terms of how similar our cells are. So whatever kills the fungi will damage our own cells. And as a result, there are very few. There's only 3 types of antifungals in the market.
Antimicrobial resistance is a global concern because it makes infections harder to treat, which results in increased medical costs and increased mortality. Now, the extensive use of antibiotics in farm animals is one of the biggest contributors to antimicrobial resistance. Another big contributor is the use of substandard medicines.
The overuse of broad-spectrum antibiotics. When we call broad-spectrum antibiotics, that means that they can kill a huge variety of bacteria.
When microorganisms are exposed to circulating doses of antimicrobials, they have a higher chance of developing resistance.
Well, in some species of fungi, it seems that they have always been resistant. They're resistant naturally, but they weren't pathogens before. So now that they have crossed that boundary, we're left with fungi that are resistant to all 3 clinically available classes of antifungals.
And now you have multi-drug resistant pathogens all over around you. So when a person gets exposed to these microbes in these places, it could be that we won't have good treatment options.
My research focuses on several areas of understanding antimicrobial resistance. Specifically, we're using computational techniques such as artificial intelligence to infer the molecular mechanisms of emerging resistance to the antimalarial drug known as artemisinin. Another area of my research is on developing computational strategies for designing antiviral drugs. Drugs designed through this approach will be able to fight a broad range of viruses and circumvent emergence of resistance.
So my group focuses on understanding how cryptococcus cause disease in susceptible individuals. So we're not working directly with antifungal resistance, but definitely our research affects it indirectly, because if we find proteins or pathways that are necessary for establishment of the infection, those will be attractive targets for intervention.
What my group does is that we're trying to understand how these pathogens interact with you. We're developing new treatments where we have molecules that can block this interaction, and basically instead of killing the pathogen and forcing them to mutate to become resistant to these antimicrobials, we're making them blind.
There are several important factors to reducing the global burden of antimicrobial and specifically antibiotic resistance. One of the most important factors is educating the public about the proper use of antibiotics.
We have to use antimicrobial drugs only when appropriate. For example, we should not self-medicate with antibiotics.
So if you're given a prescription for antifungals, use them exactly as directed.
Taking antibiotics as prescribed, finishing your course as prescribed, and being good stewards with the antibiotics that you've been given can not only help reduce the burden of antibiotic resistance, but also extend the useful life of the existing antibiotics we currently have.
An unfinished treatment may just lead to antimicrobial resistance.
So global surveillance of antibiotic resistance will be just as important as tracking the spread of any infectious disease throughout the world as we go forward.